Hey ladies, welcome back to the show. I'm your host Trisha, and I'm so happy to have you here. On our episode today, we are going to talk about this idea of gaining confidence and keeping promises to yourself. Confidence is a really powerful asset, and it helps fuel our self-esteem, and it helps us believe that we can achieve this sense of personal growth. And one of the ways that we can start to build this confidence is by learning to keep promises to ourselves. And so today we're going to explore how we can start keeping these promises to ourselves that will ultimately get us to have the things that we are trying to achieve and empower our life for whatever it is that you are trying to achieve, whether it comes to health, wellness, and self-care, or whether it just comes in other aspects of your life. A lot of times, I think as women, we set these goals that we have for ourselves, and sometimes the goals are probably really lofty, and we haven't quite gotten to a place that we have that confidence that we even believe that we can do it. And so what ends up happening is that then we don't end up doing the things that are going to get us there, and then we start to blame ourselves that somehow something is wrong with us. But maybe we just haven't developed the confidence to be able to keep that promise to ourselves that we really want to achieve something. Or maybe the goal is too big and we need to learn how to take these smaller steps in following through to build that confidence that we need to achieve the bigger goal. So one of the things that I can think about is that I think a lot of time when it comes to our health goals, women will set these, and when I talk about women, myself included here, is that we might set a goal such as, I want to make sure I exercise today, or, oh my gosh, I told myself I would drink more water, or I told myself I wouldn't eat out today, and then gosh darn it, I did it anyway. And so despite the best intentions, most women want to keep the promises that they've made to themselves, but so often life gets in the way. And as women, I believe we have more responsibilities sometimes, especially in some seasons of our life, that maybe we don't end up keeping that promise to ourselves and we give up on it really easily. And so some of the most common reasons why women don't end up keeping the promises that they make for themselves is that they prioritize other people over themselves, which again, that could vary according to whatever season you're in. Maybe you are overcommitted to something else and it just doesn't leave time for what it is that you want to accomplish. Maybe you just don't have the time of the day to do it because you are so responsible for so many other things and you just can't seem to get it all done. Or maybe you really just don't feel like you deserve to have that time to do something for you. And so when we talk about like keeping these promises to ourselves, I think it's important because a lot of times we see these like before and after pictures, right? Which drive me insane. And it's always usually about like, this is my body before that somehow wasn't worthy. And then now all of a sudden I've made these changes and I am worthy. And most people will be like, oh my God, what did you do to get there? And it's always like diet and exercise. But I think what would be so much more helpful for people would be to have like a thought bubble that says like, before, this is the way I used to think. And before, I didn't follow through with commitments that I kept to myself. And then your after photo would be something like how you're challenging the negative beliefs that you had previously and how you were able to slowly over time build confidence and get to a place that you were able to continue to keep the promises that you've made for yourself. And that it started really small, but you were able to do it consistently to achieve the goal that you now have. Because ultimately the goal is to be able to follow through and keep that promise to yourself and to get to a place that you are honoring who you are and what you want over other people's expectations of you so that you can feel more empowered and make the health changes that you so desire. So there's there's a lot of power when it comes to making a promise to yourself. And I think that goes both ways. So the power is when you make this promise to yourself, like, I am going to do this today, and then you follow through. It just represents a commitment that really shows our values and the aspirations that we have. And I think it can be like transformative. So when you were thinking about something that you were trying to achieve, whether it was going to school or something in your career, or even if it is related to your health, it probably wasn't easy, but the more you did it, and the more you got through those hardships, and the more that you showed up for yourself as consistently as you could do it, it got you to the other side, that you were able to see that there was some kind of transformation, right? And so when we're talking about this health, wellness, and self-care promise, it's the same thing. It's this idea of like that you're able to make this promise to yourself because you're trying to achieve something, and that you can start to show up for yourself daily, so that you get to a place that you actually believe that you can do it, because you've shown yourself in these little changes that you've made over time that you can actually do it. I think a lot of times we set these like big audacious goals, but we just don't have that practice of having that consistency that we can show up for ourselves. And so let's talk about this today, some steps that may work for you to get you to a place that you can start to follow through with some of the promises that you're making to yourself, so that you can start to feel like that you can do something, that you can achieve it, instead of walking away feeling like, oh my gosh, another day, another promise that I didn't keep to myself. Let me just try again tomorrow. So really trying to figure out like how you're going to embark on this path. And what I would say first is the number one thing would be to start with a really small step, because I want you to know that it's going to be something that it happens over time, that you start to build this like confidence in yourself, that you're able to follow through and keep the commitment that you desire. It just doesn't happen one time. It usually ends up being a journey. And the more that you practice following through with something you've said you're going to do for yourself, the better and the more confidence that you're going to have. And also a caveat here is that, like, as women, I think that you probably are very much able to commit to other people and keep the promises that you make to other people. But maybe you're somebody that finds it a little harder to keep that commitment to yourself. And so I think women are amazing, and I think we say we're going to do something and we do it, but oftentimes it ends up being at our own expense. And so let's try to figure out a way that it doesn't have to be at our own expense, that maybe we can do it for ourselves too. So starting with a small step is something that I think could be really helpful in setting the foundation to see that you can maintain these things on a small scale, so that over time you can start to add steps on to what it is you're trying to achieve, the bigger goal. But practicing these small steps over time will help you develop a routine that probably will fit into the bigger goal that you want to achieve, and will help to reassure yourself that you're able to follow through with the commitments that you make every day. So this can be like whatever this commitment that you want it to be for you. If you're somebody who sets out to exercise every day and then you're not able to follow through, kind of looking at like what the barriers are and trying to figure out a really small step that you can take every day, that practiced over time and building confidence on these small behaviors will get you to the bigger behavior. That could be something like, I think first it's just trying to figure out what the bigger goal is, and then starting with these baby steps that will get you there. So maybe you're too tired in the morning and that's when you decide that you're going to work out. But maybe it's because you're on your phone all night, like scrolling social media for like 2 hours. So maybe a small step, although it's not going to feel like a small step at the time, would be like following through with going to bed at a certain time. So maybe for you, it would be like, okay, I'm going to be in my bed without my phone at 9 o'clock, and then practicing that and trying to practice that as much as possible. Or maybe you're somebody who wakes up every morning and you're dehydrated. So maybe for you that you're going to make a promise that every morning you drink water before you have your tea or coffee. Or maybe you wake up in the morning, but the first thing that you do is scroll social media. And so maybe for you, there's a practice of like, okay, I'm not going to be on my phone for the first 5 minutes that I wake up. And so these things sound really small, but they can be so transformative, especially if they're barriers that are taking you away from achieving the goals that you want. And if you're able to practice doing some of these things, the more and more you do it, the easier it's going to become. And then the more you're going to feel confident in yourself and feel empowered that like, hey, I said I wasn't going to be on my phone for the first 5 minutes, and I actually achieved that. And that was something that I really wanted, right? So again, it doesn't have to be any of these goals. It can be something really small for whatever it is that you want to do. But doing it and practicing it will help you get to a place that it gains confidence, because the more consistently you do it, the more you can reaffirm to yourself like, hey, guess what? I said I was going to do something, and I actually followed through with it when it came to myself. And wow, that feels really great. And then I think once you're able to do that first step, right, then you can start to kind of get to a place that you're able to really start setting larger goals. And I think this is where we do it backwards. Like we do the bigger goals first without ever really achieving these like smaller goals that we are following through with ourselves. So maybe first starting with a small goal, and then once you're able to achieve that and you do it consistently and you start to build that confidence in yourself, then you set another small goal, and I would add it on to whatever it is you're already doing, because now like you're like, okay, well, I've built this into my morning routine. I've built this into my nighttime routine. And so now I'm just going to add another small step. And then once you do that small step, then over time, the more you keep adding on these little like achievable goals, then you're going to start to have this confidence that you can start to set the larger goals that you've made for yourself. And they'll become more realistic and more attainable because you've been practicing the smaller steps. You already have that consistency down, that it's probably not going to feel like such a big ask to do something a little bit more. Because I think a lot of times we set these expectations that are very unrealistic for where we are. And then what ends up happening is that we get disappointed that we didn't follow through with ourselves. And then we feel like we've kind of let ourselves down, and that confidence that we may have had that we would do something just isn't there. So a way that you can set yourself up for success is by setting these smaller goals, following through with them consistently, adding other goals on top of it. And then those goals, once you're doing them as consistently, will lead you to success. And then ultimately, they're going to align with what it is that you're trying to achieve. And so when we talk about doing these like small goals, let's also talk about how to plan and organize those goals. Well, what I would say is to have some kind of routine to help you follow through with it, and have a really structured approach that's going to allocate time for keeping that commitment, right? So I'm thinking of like things that we do in our life that's so automatic that we don't even think about. So for instance, like whatever your morning routine is, right? You probably wake up, you get coffee or tea, you go to the bathroom, you get ready for work. And so it would be like over time, right? You've done those things so often that you don't even think about them. And so setting kind of like a clear plan in the day like that, I would probably add whatever it is, that small thing that you want to achieve onto what you're already doing and to put it in something, a routine that you don't even have to think about. And then over time, you put that little thing in, that little thing that you're trying to achieve, you follow through with it, you don't even think about it, and then you start adding on, and more over time, you're able to achieve that goal. I think in the book Atomic Habits, they talk about that. Atomic Habits by James Clear, like that you don't want to start when you're trying to like follow through and build this confidence. You don't want to start with something that you're not even doing currently. You want to kind of like start with something really small, a really small goal that like is structured into your day for what you're already doing. And I've seen this a million times when people are trying to make health changes that like they change around their whole day. And maybe they've done something different for 20 years and now all of a sudden they've changed their whole day. But that's not like, it takes time to develop that routine. And so a lot of times it doesn't work if we're changing too many things at one time and setting a routine that isn't consistent with what our normal routine looks like. So what I would say is trying to set a little thing to do, a little goal in what you're already doing, what's already an established routine, so that it won't feel like you're like moving mountains and creating a completely new behavior change. So again, it could be something as simple as like, I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock and I'm not going to be like on my phone until 5:30. Maybe you do something else, or you listen to a meditation, or you listen to something on YouTube that calms you or helps you get out of bed, or helps, feel like it gives you confidence. Or maybe you get out of bed and you just drink a glass of water and you're like, wow, that was my small goal. I wanted to achieve that. Or maybe it's something like you want to wash your face before you go to bed or put moisturizer on your face. Well, you already have some kind of night routine set up. And so taking the structure of that works for you and adding this little routine in so that every night it becomes a little bit easier. But the bigger part is that not only are you achieving the goal, but you're also following through with the commitment that you've made to yourself. And then over time, this will help build the confidence that you are, that you're trying to achieve. And what I would say is that when you're on this journey of creating this confidence that you can follow through, try to figure out, how you can also be compassionate with yourself if you feel like you weren't able to do that today, and trying to figure out like how to learn from that behavior. Like, say you have a day that you're like, oh, I wanted to drink a glass of water before I had my coffee. Well, if you didn't do it one day, instead of criticizing yourself, maybe taking the opportunity to be like, okay, what got in the way? What was was the barrier that I had? Because it's really important to not only practice this self-compassion with yourself, but it's also important to understand some of the barriers that you have so that you can use it as an opportunity to redefine or to try to figure out how that one thing that you weren't able to achieve, how that can be changed so that you can adapt and make it work into your life. Because a lot of this isn't like, oh, I said I'm going to do this and I did it. A lot of times it's like trial and error. Like, this is so silly, but this is an example. So like, I have been working, and you probably have an example like this too. But for instance, like I have this green tea that I love to drink in the morning, and I'm trying to watch my sugar intake. So I switched to like this other like matcha green tea, and I don't particularly like it. So every day when when I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to be able to incorporate this into my life, if I'm going to, I will just take a couple minutes and practice like, okay, what can I put into this like green tea to see if I can like it? And I mean, it probably took me like 2 weeks to be like, okay, this is something that I can probably drink in the morning. But it's not to criticize it. It's to try to figure out like how I could make it work into my life, right? And so it's the same thing for you. Like if you have this commitment that you want to do something in the morning. For instance, if you want to drink a glass of water before you have your coffee, but maybe you're falling short on that. Well, then it's just trying to figure out, okay, like, can I change something? And then you've really started to redefine over time like how that works for you and how you can get it done. And it's not really a mistake or it's not really a failure. It's really just like, okay, look, I was able to figure out how to make this work for me. And then by doing that, you can kind of take the kinks out of it and then you can start to practice it more reliably and then get to what it is you're trying to achieve. And then to kind of get to a place that you can celebrate that. Like, okay, great. I finally did this. I finally achieved that. Now that's done. What can I do next? And remembering to just kind of stay like adaptable that, there's going to be times when you're not going to be able to kind of like if you're in a different place and you are a little bit off schedule, that you can start and you can be flexible with yourself because that flexibility is going to be really important too, because that's going to help you believe that you have this reliability and that I think a lot of times what happens with health, wellness, and self-care goals is that they can be so inflexible. And so a lot of times we quit because, first of all, they seem so big, they don't feel like we can achieve them, but then if we're not adaptable and the goals are too inflexible, then it's really hard to see how we can make them fit in our life. And so this way of like being compassionate with yourself and staying as adaptable as you can so that you can just adapt to a new situation will help you keep that promise to yourself too, that it might not always look perfect and it might not always be in the same sequence, but you were able to do it. And that's the bigger issue here is that you've established that you want to achieve something small and that you were able to follow through with it. And it doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't always have to look good. It just has to be that you're following through so that you can gain that trust in yourself and overall gain that confidence that you're doing what you're saying that you're going to do. And so knowing that like, as you progress on this journey of health, wellness, and self-care, it's going to be important for you to gain this confidence and keep these promises or commitments that you make to yourself. And as you continue to do that, your self-esteem will flourish. You're going to feel this greater sense of trust that you have followed through to yourself, what you said you were going to do. You're going to feel really proud of yourself. And you're going to probably get to a place that you then become motivated to do the very thing that you were so unmotivated to do. And if you didn't hear, I did an episode last week about motivation, but I think it was last week, but recently about motivation and how really taking action is the thing that leads to motivation. But I think that having this confidence that you're able to follow through with what it is you want to do, that's also going to get you to a place to motivate you because you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I said I was going to go to the gym and I actually did it. Or I said that I was not going to be on social media before I went to bed because it makes me feel really bad. And look what, I did it. So in doing that, you are going to flourish and you're going to have this sense of trust in yourself. And then overall, as you start to achieve the goals that you desire in these small ways, it's also going to help you feel motivated that you can keep that commitment to yourself. And so following through and keeping that commitment to yourself will probably be and spill out into other areas in your life too, right? Because you're going to feel more confident. You're going to be able to feel like you are following through with what it is you want, and you're going to feel more empowered to achieve or to start looking at things and knowing that you can achieve them, that you just didn't like fall into a place of kind of like tuning out once you got home from work, that you were able to do things that maybe were more in line with what it is you're trying to achieve. So gaining that confidence in yourself, and in order to do that, it requires you to keep a commitment that you've made to yourself. And in the although it may feel really difficult at the beginning, in the long term, it's going to be an investment in yourself. It's going to be an investment in your personal growth. And it's going to be an investment in your health too. And by taking these small steps that you do consistently and that you start to take bigger steps, add it on to the smaller steps, that over time it's going to set you in a clearer path of seeking the goals that you want. It's going to be important for you to again have this idea of self-compassion and being flexible. But by doing this and by achieving these goals, it's going to unlock this sense of fulfillment and empowerment in yourself and create this sense of self-reliability that you can follow through on the goals that you want to achieve. And it'll give you the confidence to know that like you can become that before and after picture that you have in your mind, because you are taking these steps, that you are making these commitments to yourself that over time are going to get you to the bigger goal that you want to achieve. But that bigger goal starts with really small goals that you're able to show up for yourself for. And then over time, the more you show up for yourself for the little things, then you can get yourself to show up for the bigger things. And then that's what's going to motivate you to take action on the health, wellness, and self-care goals that I suspect that you have. So thanks so much for listening today. I hope that you're able to think of one small thing that you can do in your day, one small action that you can take that will be in line with the bigger goal that you're trying to achieve, whether it be making time to stretch in the morning because you feel like really out of shape, and maybe stretching is the thing that ultimately will get you to the bigger thing of consistent exercise, whether you make lunch for yourself before you go to work because you have a bigger goal of not eating out as much, whether it is that you are able to do 5 minutes of writing in a journal or doing a meditation on YouTube because your bigger goal is to have more self-care, whether it's just hanging out with your partner for a couple more minutes or getting off of social media for a little bit of time, whatever is hindering your life. Let's think of something that you can do today, that you can set a small goal that will lead you and that's in line with a bigger goal that you're trying to achieve when it comes to any goal in your life, but in particular your health, wellness, or self-care goal. I look forward to seeing you guys back here next week, and I hope that you have a great week, and I hope that you're able to look at something that you're already doing or that you are wanting to do, that you can take action today to start to build that confidence in yourself and keep that commitment to yourself, because you are worthy of it, you are deserving of it, and you are enough that you don't need to keep following through for other people and not yourself. All right, so I'll see you guys back here next week. Have a good weekend.